Welcome to Your Place on the River, a podcast brought to you by Carriage Key of Woodstock, Georgia, in partnership with Chattahoochee Nature Center. Our mission is to connect people with nature. As a private nonprofit 501c3 organization, CNC thrives thanks to support of our members, the community, and listeners like you. Discover more about Chattahoochee Nature Center at chatnaturecenter.org. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. Tweet us at CNC Nature using the hashtag YPOTR. And here's your host, Melissa Carter.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Melissa Carter. I wanted to share a quote that's credited to Dr. Mark Holterhoff from the University of Edinburgh. Nature and children are natural playmates. They're both wild and messy, unpredictable and beautiful. My first memories of nature are from childhood, and I discussed this with Sam Leaf, who is the Outreach and Partnerships Coordinator at the Chattahoochee Nature Center. He's also a CNC naturalist. I remember as a kid just wanting to be outside as much as I could. I remember just times where I walked out to my front yard. We lived in a house where I had about a half an acre in the front, and I would just run. I would just go from one side of the yard to the other. I don't know why, but I felt like running. Or even in the dead of winter, I would put on the heaviest coats, and I'd want to be outside with my dog, and we'd go in the backyard, and we'd lay down and look at the sky or whatever. So why is it that children have this natural need to be in nature, and somehow as adults we tend to not do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I had a very similar childhood as you. I had woods at the end of my street, so that's just where we went after school. We just knew we were going to go spend time in the woods no matter the season. I think as, you know, it's in our human history to be outside and connected with nature, to use all of our senses out in nature. That's how we survived thousands of years ago, you know. So if you have spent any time with a 3 or 4 year old, you know that they love animals. And they love being outside. And I have a 6 and 4 year old. They have spent an entire day being snakes. They don't break character. They had their own snake language.
That's
so
awesome.
It's just something that is natural. They love animals. They love being outside. It's their curiosity.
Yeah.
They're asking questions. And then as we get older, sometimes we think we know everything. Mm-hmm. And then we have this scheduled life where we go from one thing to the next. School is very scheduled.
Yeah. And inside most of the time.
You're in these 4 walls. And then over time, maybe you stop asking those questions that you did when you were younger about being outside and what animals are around you. We're very specialized, I'd say. Mm-hmm. So you might just focus on playing soccer or playing baseball, and you don't have that unstructured free time anymore.
Yeah, it reminds me that in my own family, my sister used her career in Parks and Rec because she could not stand being inside. Like she was the nature kid. And my brother and I took more traditional roles in corporate America and worked in a building at a desk. And I think the perception of my sister was that she wasn't as professionally minded as my brother and myself. And so, but in the end, you know, she was the smartest one to really tap into the fact that she wanted to be in nature.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Like I said, I'm a parent of 6 and 4 year old boys, and it can be intimidating to see what every other parent is doing with their child.
Right.
They're enrolled in 5 different after school things, and you think, oh man, that's what I need to be doing with my kids, but that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
It's okay to let them just be kids and play.
Well, we have a 10-year-old, and he's an only child, and you know, I think that we purposely tried to structure some of those things, sports activities, outdoor activities for him so that he's outside and being physically active because, and this may be the case with a lot of older kids where his tendency would be to stay inside and play video games, stay inside and watch YouTube, which is nothing wrong. I'm not the parent who thinks that YouTube and video games are bad, but obviously not all day long, all the time. And so, you know, we kind of do that forced thing to make sure that, one, he's interacting with other kids, and then 2, to be outside, right? But he doesn't usually argue with us. So the good thing is that I guess we've done some of our job because he enjoys being outside. And one of the things he still has instinctually is when it rains, he wants to be outside in it without an umbrella. He wants to dance in the rain. And so to that point, you work with a lot of kids. And so it's just to show and to remind, our listeners the fact that think about your own childhood. And especially if you lived in the country or a small town, but even if you lived in the city, it was just nice to be outside. So talk about tapping into that instinct with kids and how kids come here and what they learn and how they can interact with the center.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have so many different programs for kids in schools. And obviously, in those programs, we hit on all the school standards. That's why the teachers want to come here for our programs, is we do follow Georgia state standards. But besides that, I like to think that we always ask our staff, what can we do differently at the Nature Center than they can do at school? So that's how we kind of guide our program. So obviously we have our trails and we have our animals. Those are the two big things. But let's let their curiosity and inquiry lead these programs and see where that takes us. So one of the things that I try to tell our naturalists is they're coming here for a program, but we have the opportunity to teach them, give them tools that they can connect to nature. So they can then take those tools and bring them home and connect to nature where they live.
Right.
So we're teaching them how to connect using their senses, their hearing, their feeling, their smelling. And then if there's something that we run into on the trail that we might not know what it is, we go, all right, let's go see how we can find out what that is. What do we notice about that animal?
Yeah.
What do we wonder about that animal? What does that animal or plant remind us of? So those kind of questions and curiosity that we model for the kids and we get them to do, they can now take that home with them.
Well, I know that my son, when he first came here, he was probably 2 or 3, and he was collecting rocks at the time. So I was trying to think of his favorite things initially at the center, and it was some of the geological displays and things that were for sale in the store, and then the butterflies. I don't know if he had paid attention to butterflies before that, but I think he always loved, and he still loves, animals that fly. Like, he envies the ability to fly.
Sure.
And so when he was standing in the butterfly habitat and they were all flying around him, I think it was really magical for him, because it's kind of concentrated here and centralized, and everybody here knows, what is going on within wherever the kid is standing or just in nature in general. And I think it's a really great opportunity for that curiosity to be fostered.
Sure.
Where, and us as parents and those who are parents know that you kind of make it up as you go along, and you're exhausted and you're busy, and there's times that you may not handle a situation as well as you would have liked, where here any question can be answered, right? I know that I'm the parent that we research what we don't know, but I know that there's some parents that don't have time for that, right? So, and I always think that at times a child can misunderstand what message they're getting, where their question's not important or they're not being recognized, where that's not the case from the adult standpoint. But here, you can be as free as you want to be when it comes to your interest in nature.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, I did for our naturalist staff training this summer. I counted how many questions my 6 and 4-year-old asked in one day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but my 6-year-old asked me over 300 questions in one day.
That's awesome.
So what do you think?
And every parent's going, oh, God.
What do you think happens to that number as they get older?
It decreases, obviously.
So here, I'm not interested in what you know. I'm interested in what you don't know.
Yeah.
And oftentimes an answer will be the end of the conversation. Or naming a bird that you see, giving it a name might end the conversation right there.
Yeah.
Instead of let's observe what we're looking at. Let's find out how many things we can find out about it without knowing what it is.
Right. I came from parents who lived on farms, and then I lived in a small town, so I didn't live on a farm, but I still lived on several acres of land that I was able to explore when I was bored. But here, living in a city, sometimes I think parents, for either safety reasons or opportunity, the child doesn't have that same ability to just go out in a field and walk around and climb a tree and that kind of thing. Yeah. So how do you think you kind of fill in that gap for local kids who don't have the ability that you and I had, just going to the creek or, just being kids kicking around a stone in the yard?
Yeah, I think that's important because an experience we see a lot is we have kids that come on field trips and we tell them we're going to go on a hike in the woods, and their first reaction is that they're scared. Or we're getting ready to go in the canoe in the river, and they're scared of going out on the water. Or we bring out a snake and they're frightened. So first of all, we acknowledge that that's totally natural and it's okay. And then we just find ways where we model our wonder. We give them a sense of wonder and say, if you're nervous, why don't you come walk up in the front of the line with us, and we can walk together. But you're absolutely right. I think there's a danger in thinking that nature experiences have to happen at a national park or a safari or the Arctic or some great expedition, right? But really, anywhere you are, there's nature around you. So even in the city, you gotta just look for the small details.
Yeah.
So a great nature adventure could be a caterpillar walking across a leaf. It could be the cardinal or blue jay that you see flying through the air, the silhouette of a hawk.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
My son loved Bluey. I mean, they don't sponsor the podcast, but but if you've never seen Bluey, it's on Disney, but it's an Australian animated show, and they usually show those children outside or asking questions or using their imaginations a lot.
Yes, and that's watching videos isn't always a problem, right?
Exactly right. Yes, it's what you're watching, right? And so he just loves Bluey. He loves Spidey and his amazing friends who are out, slinging around the city and usually are outside. So I do appreciate some of these shows that show the children out of the house, right, and doing something. And I really do think it makes a difference. And again, for the city, for instance, like my son right now is not too thrilled with bees and yellow jackets and wasp. And, I don't know where he had this awareness that they may cause pain.
Sure.
But every time we have the conversation, I try to explain to him, well, this is their purpose, right? And they don't care about you. If you smell like a flower, then they're going to check you out, but they don't care about you. So just don't worry about them. But he can't get over that fear. So you brought up, the children that have these natural fears. Again, how would you tell parents to help their children who might be afraid of nature, who a hike in the park may just be a Halloween thing that they've done a haunted, hike is the only experience they have with taking a hike, right?
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for parents on how they can help their kids?
I think it's really important just to expose them often to nature, spend time with your kids. One of the things we talk about and for programs here and what I try to do with my kids is my behavior how I interact with nature. I want to model it for the kids. My curiosity, my wonder. If I can do a good job at that, they're going to take cues from me. So if I'm excited to go out in the woods, if I'm excited to go look at a flower and count how many pollinators come in the span of 10 minutes, that's just something they're going to pick up on.
Right.
And they're going to pick up on the wonder that you have. Like, I'm very careful about what I push on my kids.
Yeah.
I don't want to push them into anything they're not interested in. But when I'm outside,
God, Dad, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
when I'm outside, I can't help myself. Like that's one thing that I really want to be able to pass on.
Yeah. Well, I think excitement is contagious, right? And so I think it's one thing to where I think a child can sense whether it's your genuine excitement that you're sharing as opposed to you forcing something. So I think, children can tell the difference. So what are some of the most common questions that you get from kids at the center?
We have a joke that the first question we always get is, when is lunch? That seems to be the first question they always ask. They are so curious about our animals that we have. They want to know how they came to be here at the Nature Center. They want to know their stories. And so we do a great job of telling them that, these were wild animals. Unfortunately, they've had some injuries and now they can't survive in the wild anymore. So we go through that with them. Let's see. Common question.
Well, it's like when I ask my son, how was school today? What was your favorite part of the day? And he always says recess. But again, because it was outside, that's a positive answer, right?
Yeah.
They don't care about the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, we get a lot of, how long is this hike?
But they're absorbing something.
Of course.
Because I think that what I take from nature is just the smells and the sounds right? Like here we are outside and it's just peaceful and it's reminds me of being a kid, being outside, you know?
Yeah, we talk a lot about mindfulness. And to me, being mindful is just living in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And so when you're outside hiking a trail or you're rolling over a log to see what's underneath the log, you have to be present. You have to be in the present moment.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of programs where we talk about mindfulness and meditation. We don't really need to say that to the kids because we're doing it anyway.
Right.
So when we take a moment to hear how many different animals we can hear, how many birds we can hear, that's practicing being in the present.
Right.
And that's not something that the kids especially, get to do throughout their day very much.
Well, and it goes to show, like you said, it doesn't matter where you live, whether it's an apartment, townhouse, house with a spread of land, you can look out the window and see nature and walk outside on the back porch or open the window, or there's ways to connect.
Absolutely.
And it's healthy for us to do so. So if, someone's listening who's a parent, who's a teacher, and wants to get their kids involved in the center, what should they do?
Well, they can definitely just come and visit whenever they want. They can reach out to me, and my email is partnership@chattnaturecenter.org. But we have all kinds of programs. We reach out to schools. We have all different. Our Halloween hikes is a big event coming up. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of different ways to get involved with the Nature Center. We can travel to their school, to their scout group. It's really endless ways we can get in touch with them.
All right, one last question, Sam. So when your children are grown up and they're, camping or they're outside, what is the thing you want them to remember about their dad?
Oh, man. I want them to remember that I think to be a lifelong learner, always stay curious, and to look for the adventure.
I love it. Thank you, Sam, for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Place on the River, brought to you by Carriage Key of Woodstock, Georgia, in partnership with Chattahoochee Nature Center. Remember to like and subscribe to Your Place on the River wherever you get your podcast. Visit chattnaturecenter.org to stay updated on all happenings at the Nature Center.